to be in Colorado and we're surrounded by military bases, so we have a lot of compliance. Which I don't think is it's not like military influence, but we just have a fair amount of compliance. Okay, yay. Looks like we're just about in, so it should show up on the feed in just a second. Yay. All right. Good morning, everybody, and welcome to today's Eat and Greet. And hopefully in the next hour, we're going to give you something that is absolutely worth the time you took to show up and engage with us. So I'm really excited because you're a fellow YouTuber. So I kind of feel like we have a little kindred spirit moment happening right now. Pretty much everybody else who's come over has been, just practicing astrologer, but you have the YouTube vibe. We have that in common, and I love that.
Yeah, absolutely. You're right. We've been doing it for quite some time, haven't we? So it's definitely a cool platform to express astrology on.
Yeah, absolutely. So this morning we are going to talk about intercepted signs in the chart, which are just not like the devil's backyard. They're really not. They are useful and they are on purpose typically. And Simon Vorster is going to walk us through that. So thank you so much for being here, Simon.
Yeah, absolutely. It's been a pleasure to watch all of your meet and greets so far, and to be able to now actually be in the house. I've got my apples to eat.
Got your apples. That's so beautiful. I know. And I have some nuts today. I actually left my water out in the kitchen, but that's okay. I just won't hydrate. So for now. Yeah, beautiful. Oh, and we've got the chat filling up already. And so if you are watching and you're coming in, good morning. So before we jump in, little bit of house cleaning here for just a quick second. First of all, you can always come back and watch the Eat and Greets on Patreon, and you can watch them here as well. So depending on where you would like to engage, they are absolutely available to you. And you can also go over to Simon's channel and learn all kinds of other astrology. And I think you have videos like from the ground up, right?
Yeah, that's right. It's something that for me personally I value is creating a foundation for being able to understand astrology and all of the knowledge that's held in it.
Yeah, brilliant. And so how did you get into astrology?
Well, it started way back at the age of 10 years old when I've got lots of planets in Sagittarius. In fact, one of the charts that I wanted to share today, I hope it's not too self-absorbed, but my chart is a intercepted in it, and there's loads of Sag there. So I grew up in an environment where there were a lot of people that were interested in astrology or metaphysics and stuff, and I just kind of naturally orientated and gravitated towards it and just picked it up. And then probably around about the age of 17, 18, I started to see the value in how I could identify Linda Goodman's book, if I'm not mistaken, right?
Mm-hmm.
Sun Signs. She described facial features associated with signs. And I was like, okay, this looks interesting. And I kind of did that, and that kind of explored it more. So, pretty much my whole entire life I've been digesting astrology knowledge.
Little bits at a time, huh?
Mm-hmm.
And so as you kind of landed in the professional zone of doing it, how did you decide what you wanted to specialize in, or which area kind of called more to you?
Right. So, well, three things actually. Saturn return was in the 10th house. Was okay. You got to find some sense of direction in life. And so that was a Saturn return that really marked the point of taking it from just a very strong, intense hobby to something that needs to kind of become more integrated into a life direction. Then at the time that my Saturn return was happening, I was seeking to understand astrology at deeper levels. So what would happen is I would discover something, and then I'd say, okay, I've got that. And then I want to go deeper and go deeper until eventually I said, I want to find the origins of astrology. And within about 2 to 3 weeks from really saying that out loud, weirdly enough, I came across evolutionary astrology. Now, while that's not the origins per se, what it did for me was it brought me to a place of understanding life and reality from a very natural law perspective. In other words, looking at life as an archetype and seeing how these archetypes interplay and how they allow us to access more of the deeper unconsciousness. What's the soul's journey? Why are we really here in that sense? So that kind of helped me answer these really profound Sagittarius questions. So that's why I chose EA. It also helped me resolve some really intense psychological emotional trauma, because I realized, okay, I've got skip steps, and that gave me the insight to understand that. And I was like, okay, professionalism, or taking it professionally, using my personal connection to it, led me then to finding Jeffrey Wolf Green's work. And the last story was taking all of the money that I had. I think I had very little money of it. And my partner said to me, you have to invest in it. So she played a very big role in saying, you've got to do this. And so it was that moment of, okay, I commit. And I took, I think it was like $1,300 or $1,400 or something that I had all. And I just invested it in the school and said, I have to commit. Saturn in Scorpio in the 10th. And so that's what landed me here, essentially. Yeah.
That is amazing. It's always interesting, I think, for us to kind of hear the journey of how you got there, because it's literally, most people, whether we felt a call to it or whatever, there is this moment of, I'm going to commit. You know, so it's always neat to hear people's commitment moment, I think. Yeah. And so how did you get into the commitment position with YouTube?
Well, two things. I was talking to somebody about Saturn transiting Libra at the time, and they said, wow, you're really good at this. You should actually take this further. So there was a sense of, okay, I've got to really, connect with this message. And there was a movement going forward. And then what happened was I digested all the material, and I thought, wow, everybody seems to really trying to figure something out at the moment. Uranus was transiting Aries at the stage. Okay. And so there was a lot of need that I saw where people were trying to ask questions. But I first recognized it in myself. I was like, I'm really alone here. I feel like if I could turn to somebody and say, why is this happening? Mm-hmm. Even though I had astrology at the time to objectify it, it felt very sort of absent. And I was like, okay, well, I'm going to go onto this platform and I'm going to say, hey, by the way, I exist. I have this cool little system that helps. And if you're kind of lost, not knowing what's going on, here's a guidance system that helped me. And I'm going to put up my hand and kind of wave it in a very loud way. And so that actually became the manifestation of it. It was just creating content and letting people kind of attune to it and say, hey, oh, okay, this Pluto placement's really interesting, and so on.
Yeah, that's brilliant. And so if you guys are looking, you can find Simon's channel at Raising Vibrations just here on YouTube and check it out. And you've done just a fantastic job. It was so funny. I remember one of the first times I watched one of your videos, I was like, oh my God, I have to quit YouTube. This was so good. It was so well done. So bravo to you. Good content.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Thanks very much. I definitely felt the same way from other astrologers until I stopped watching, because I knew that I needed to.
That is the trick, isn't it? It's like, I have to not watch, just be in my own lane. And from there, then I was able to really appreciate other people's content. But when I was watching others at first while I was doing it, it was almost paralyzing fear for me, because then I would overthink and just... Oh my gosh. So if you're creating a YouTube channel, don't watch anybody else.
Yeah, no, it's the truth. You really got to tune into what's real for you and allow that to be present. And you can always use mentors, as guidance, but really it's your own actualization that's important. Weirdly enough, that's where my intercepted signs are. So
that's awesome. So let's get to it then. Let's talk about these old intercepted signs. And if you've never seen an intercepted sign, or you've never even heard of it, or maybe you just use a system that won't ever show you an intercepted sign, then you would have no reason to know about them. But essentially what happens, and what it looks like anyways, is if you're using Placidus or one of those division systems, you have a sign per house on the cusp, but you don't. Sometimes you'll have a sign at the beginning of the house, a sign in the next house, and one sign that is living in the middle of both of those. So it's kind of like it's trapped or stuck or just not sure what to be when it grows up. And typically an intercepted sign, at least I find in my practice, really benefits from either having a planet that is there to help it out, or a planet that transits it and wakes it up a little bit. Because if not, that planet is trying to express, but in the strongest voice it has, it's two different signs. So it's kind of like, that's not really my voice, until a transit comes along, and then it's like, I'm this sign, hear me roar, So it's an interesting kind of placement where, depending also how you practice, it may be the interpretation of that planet can't express itself, which I don't really think. Or it can be that it struggles or something that is not so fun, So I would love to hear your explanation and how you work with that. I have intercepted signs as well, and I'm living my life. So
I noticed somebody in the chat was asking which house system I use. Now, for me, the school of astrology that I align myself with, while at the same time embracing my moon in Gemini in the fifth, which is where the interception is for me, and I'll share it. It's so the lens I use is porphyry house system, and one of the reasons why that house system gets used is simply because it is measuring past, present, and future as a principle of looking at the chart from an EA perspective. Okay, so a porphyry house system does that, and I generally tend to find charts with intercepted signs in them using porphyry. So there's quite a lot of information that gets held with that. So, well, I know that there's quite a diverse way of interpreting the intercepted signs, and what you shared earlier, right, was very true, to be honest. I mean, when I show you my chart and look at the transits, you'll actually see very clearly how this specific significant event speaks to what you talked about with intercepted signs coming alive during transits. Okay, so that's I'm excited to share that. But another way that I also tend to find interest in how intercepted signs show up is where, from an EA perspective, we'll say, okay, if there's a lot of tension, a lot of stress on the planets that are associated with those signs, so just randomly, if you've got an intercepted Cancer Capricorn axis, right, generally the moon and the Saturn placement in the chart will reveal quite a tremendous amount of whether that expression is something that is dormant on purpose or dormant because it's developing and, for whatever reason across the soul's journey, right? So there are events or experiences that will correlate to why those intercepted signs are there, right? And so if you see an intercepted signs and you notice that these planets, the moon in this example or Saturn in this example, is got stressful aspects like squares or conjunctions, you can pretty much, from having a conversation with the client, see whether or not this is something that they are very unaware of, right? Developmentally, there wouldn't have been that type of energy in their home that they would have been able to develop. And so there's a sense of this open space in which those archetypes get the opportunity to flourish, right? So there's growth potential here. And so, of course, transits, progressions, and such bring these experiences to the table. When it comes to the polarity or the other side, where there are harmonious aspects, you'll actually see very clearly that this person is incredibly pronounced and really good at expressing these intercepted signs in their life. There will be very strong characteristics of it. And so it seems to be something that's just in the backdrop and not part of the emotional growth or changes that seem to take place in a person's life. So those have been my observations when taking this knowledge and saying, okay, is this true? I've needed to apply it as well and observe. And so far, my experience has been pretty much 100% accurate, that it has either been A, that the person is developing it, or B, that it is very pronounced. And so it doesn't take up a lot of attention in terms of emotional growth, essentially.
Yeah, absolutely. So in case you're new to hearing this, if you have a sign on your chart that is intercepted or kind of stuck in the middle of the two sign, the opposite of that sign will be intercepted as well. So it's just important to know that you're not going to get like just one. They're a package deal. So you can work on it. Right? It's not like just this one sign is going to be intercepted for you. So before we kind of push forward and show some examples so that people can really see it, I see a question in the chat, or it's more of a statement, and I think it's good to address it. So it says, it's always confusing with clients to tell them that the sign that touches the cusp of the house, it rules that house, instead of the sign that takes up the most amount of space. So maybe we can explore that for a second, because as I've been taught and experienced, even if somebody has Scorpio is the ruler of the third house, and then they end up having an intercepted Sagittarius energy, which does take up a majority of the house. And then we see Capricorn at the end. What I have always been taught is that the ruler of that cusp is in charge. So in the end, that sign and that planet are who says what goes. Regardless of how much space is taken, you may feel the emphasis of the other signs, but that planet that is on the cusp and that sign is who's the boss. So what about you?
Yeah, I pretty much agree with you 100%. And one of the methods that you can actually do to draw out what is a pretty fun exercise, to be honest, when looking at a chart, is repeating themes. So themes in the chart that show up consistently, that really point to a very specific message that is illuminated in the chart, right? So I like to always see the chart as, what is the message that the chart is telling me? You tell me, chart, and then I feel into that and resonate with whether or not that's real. So yeah, I agree with you 100%. There, to me, from my observation and correlation, that the sign that rules that house plays a tremendous role in how that gets colored. And again, the sign that is, in a sense, intercepted, there plays a role. There's a flavor in it. But again, through transits, you really get to feel that. You really get to see if that experience is true or not. And I definitely had that during the Venus retrograde that we just had. I saw it like really, really loud in my life.
Sure. Oh gosh. Well, and I think we might share one, but I have a Gemini Sag interception as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So you too.
Yeah, but it's where you say, is it in the backdrop or is it unconscious? And that's always interesting to see with these intercepted signs, because I've also got other placements. When you look at it, you go, oh yeah, that's backdropping.
Right. Exactly.
Pretty well aware of those placements.
So what I've come to find as really helpful in determining what the message or why those interceptors will be there has a lot to do with a kind of questioning, really looking at the actual experience of your life and how it correlates to the events, looking at, for instance, when I've had transits to my intercepted sign Sag, there generally tends to be a lot of material come to the surface for me around growing up in South Africa. All right. So this has a lot to do with my own personal placement of that intercepted sign. So a lot of what I experienced growing up in South Africa and the culture, but then living abroad here in Sweden, and how I'm very sensitive to that difference. And particularly with Uranus being there as well, there's very much about this kind of deep memory associated with it, of the Sagittarius archetype within my life. So when I have transits that take place, I notice my field of vision, or things show up, or I'll have a conversation with a friend or that's still living there. It shows up and it kind of brings memory to the surface for me. And it brings me closer to how I really feel about that situation, or is there anything I still need to process, as an example. That's how it tends to show up for me in terms of when intercepted signs play out.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I know when I get a good interception right there at the top of my chart, and it actually turns into the idea extravaganza. And I have to be very careful about that, because what it almost feels like is, because that one part of that interception is very mercurial, and I already have Mercury out of bounds, and it can feel like a spin, and it is almost a chaotic spin if I'm not careful. So
wow, that's really interesting.
Yeah,
that's a cool observation to have around that. So with Mercury being in Scorpio at the moment, but going to be entering Sag within the next couple of weeks, and then the Sun also going to be entering Sag, I suspect that you're kind of already paying attention to when this moment of
I have been, yes. And because because that perspective is, okay, when there's a transit, we're going to be on. We're going to be on, girls. We're going to be on. It is a little bit of understanding the prep time. So I have some projects in the basket waiting. And it's like, okay, well, I'll have a lot more depth of clarity as to how to get those out without being a lunatic, which is really important. So should we show some charts so that we can actually see what this is, and then we can go back in and maybe answer some questions about the different axes?
Sure, absolutely. Before I share this PowerPoint presentation, I just got a list of charts, of natal charts, and then a transit and how that kind of shows up. I wanted to say that, you know, what I noticed with intercepted signs, particularly within, if again, for me personally, when looking at the charts, what I'm looking at is, you know, what is the emotional journey of this person? You know, what is the type of material, the core content that exists with this person and what they're carrying with them, and how does that play out regarding the chart? So I noticed in the chats, you know, somebody's talking about an Aquarius Leo interception. You know, to me, that would immediately spring to looking at how this person may have experienced creative self-actualization or the lack thereof in their life. And so that becomes a very strong attention around, if they look in their environment, who is self-actualizing? You know, who is being able to really take up space and be very leonic with their nature, or who is very detached and aloof and kind of sitting back and saying, I'm afraid to be rejected by the group if I speak up, you know, this kind of thing. So it tends to kind of show up emotionally when I see intercepted signs in that way. So that's kind of how I perceive or look at it, because my intention is to see what's the emotional journey of the person.
Sure.
You know, yeah, just wanted to add to that. So that's this kind of clarity about how the chart looks to me, at least through my lens. Okay.
Good. Well, we're going to pull up some charts and some examples right here, guys, so that you can see it and then align that with your chart. And we'll go a little bit from there. But I think it's important with interceptions, just like anything else, but it's important to see it so you can really identify what you're looking at. So, yeah. Oh my gosh. And look at this background. Just wow.
So chart A this is my chart. And again, I was kind of like hesitant to go, should I use that or not, because of, you know, the 10th house thing of feeling self-important. But it is interesting because there's such an amount of planets in this sign over here. And you can see the nodes are also part of this interception. So there's quite a lot of weight in the Sagittarius Gemini constellation. And it's hidden within this 5th house, 11th house patterning, as it were. And so if we can do this, we can say, okay, if you look at this chart over here, there's the cusp of the 6th house. So there's the 6th house, and there's the cusp of the 6th house, and it's being influenced by the Cancer archetype. And the 5th house is being influenced. There's the 5th. It's being influenced by the Taurus archetype. So there's that's what the cusps look like, of course, in terms of Scorpio and Taurus, and then hidden in that element there is the Gemini feature. What I wanted to add as well is that if you're going to have intercepted signs like this, you're also going to have houses that are going to be ruled by they're going to be ruled by the same sign. So in this case, the 2nd house is influenced both by Pisces here, and so is the 3rd, right? And then the 2nd house is influenced or hidden there. So if you're going to look at your charts and you're going to see interceptions like that, then some other part of your chart will have the houses intercepted by signs as opposed to the signs intercepted there.
Which also means that, if, just to be clear, when you look over and you see all of that super Pisces 2nd house, the 8th house is going to be super Virgo.
Yes.
They're always going to be working in their polarity. So as you're taking a peek at your chart, just peek at that as well.
Yeah, that's a really, really important point to make. So I'm really pleased that you kind of highlight that, because as you can see, I'm consistently pointing to the Sagittarius point, but of course the Gemini polarity is here. So that's how we would look at the chart. We would look at it and say, okay, there's an intercepted sign, as in Sagittarius intercepted, Gemini there with the 5th house. And then you would also look to the house itself and say, okay, well, there's Pisces and there's the cusp. Does that feel very clear in terms of the chat? I can't really see it, but I hope that seems clear.
So far we're doing pretty well. And now in your chart, you have this intercepted Sag, but you've got all of these planets there. So do the planets act as helpers to that Sagittarian voice?
Well, I would So it's a really good question, because I've tried to figure this out myself. So if I had to apply my own philosophy slash logic in terms of EA, I'd say what I said to you earlier was, I grew up in an environment in which there was so many metaphysical people around me, okay, in different ways. But really, if I had to say how that those planets show up for me in terms of my karma, here's this very 10th house orientated placement, okay, especially the Pluto, Sun, Saturn theme there. And my parents split when Pluto transited my Saturn, so at the age of 5. And I actually ended up then being raised by four parents, essentially, right? Two mothers and two fathers in the way that I was raised. So there's this kind of Gemini energy here, this duality that shows up. And each parent had a specific Sagittarius quality to them. So my mom was the metaphysical astrology seeker. The other mother was a high school teacher that taught maths, right? My other parent was a lawyer. And my dad, in his role, he went to businesses and essentially took a specific type of core philosophy or truth, and then went to food industries and helps them align their core philosophy so that their message could reflect what their purpose was. So I had these 4 people around me that had different Sagittarius expressions. Sure. And the duality of self-expression is really there. How do they play out for me? Well, again, this brought me to why I would do astrology in my life. But it also shows this kind of material around my past, where I would grow up in a culture that's very connected to natural law, very connected to nature, and Sagittarius is the archetype of nature. And it contributes a tremendous amount as to why we're actually sitting here today, having this conversation around a system of thought that brings us something new. Right. But I've very much been stuck in that place. I've very much been stuck there. I haven't been able to really access this. It's only at my Saturn return that I start to recognize that I needed to do this. But it wasn't something that was actually real to me. I didn't understand why it was the case within my life. So I knew that there was a purpose, right? 5th house, North Node, Moon in the 5th house, Gemini. I knew that I needed to express it, but what the purpose of it was, I have no idea. It was very much rooted in this energy here. So I'll pause there, and if there's anything else you wanted to share on that.
No, I don't think so.
Like in my case, as an example, we would say, okay, well, Simon, if you're looking at it from an EA perspective, this energy, what does it mean? Is it overdeveloped or underdeveloped, right? And on the outside, and this is something that's part of the Mercury that's in Scorpio at the moment, and I'm going to show you the transits and how it's been activated. But on the outside, I talk about astrology. I do, I express on YouTube. It's a very Sagittarius Gemini feature. I'm very much talking about the system of thoughts and expressing it and being in a very Leonic way and in a very public way. But if I come back into the home, if I come back into the part of the more intimate part of my life, which is self-expression, there is a tremendous amount of trauma that sits there around actually feeling as if I have a voice, if I can express my needs, if there's a sense of feeling accepted or received. My mom was unfortunately very affected by narcissistic trauma. And so I've pretty much been affected much by that. So there's a kind of very deep core wound in feeling seen. So while on the surface, it looks like I'm sharing this here, really, there's a lot of me that's putting it out there with vulnerability and saying, is this okay? And that's where I see the intercepted energy here show up in terms of so much energy on the 5th house and the 11th house. It appears one way as somebody that can really articulate, as you can see. But in my emotional reality inward, there's a lot of development that's still taking place around codependency, feeling of being able to feel that I have a right to say something, all of those types of things. And so that's where I'm consistently healing myself through, what I feel is really authentic. Not that this astrology isn't, it's just a place I feel comfortable with, but in an intimate conversation around acknowledging my needs and how I feel safe around them, that's a different story. And that's where I feel like they're hidden.
Yeah. Wow.
In fact, that's actually how it shows up, because this is the first time I'd be expressing it openly like this.
Well, then you're doing the work, right? You're coming to the knowing.
Yeah,
Brilliant.
exactly.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that with us too, because it is, I think it's beautiful when we bring charts, but these are charts of real life people and experiences, right? And how we're trying to get through it. And so now this one is your chart with current transits.
Yep, that's right.
Okay.
Exactly. So one thing that's been really interesting to me is, of course, the fact that within a couple of weeks, maybe, I'm not entirely sure the exact conjunction, but there you can see the nodes going to be aligning, right? Very, very clearly there. And that's in the intercepted sign. Venus is, I mean, it's 26 degrees at the moment. They're sitting at Libra, but it's right on my MC. Okay. And, to me, Venus plays a tremendously important role in how how this intercepted sign shows up. In other words, how things actually become real and open for me. And then Mercury sitting there, which is the ruler of my North Node. So Mercury, being the ruler of my North Node, sits on top of the Sun and Saturn. So there's this is a really interesting thing, because this will probably be this is the first time that I've had a conversation with another YouTuber in this way, in which there's an exposure to people beyond who know me. Just there's your entire audience. And so just being able to share that for the first time and be very kind of clear about how that shows up, and the exposure in the very 10th house, you can see that there's a lot. Yeah. And I
Big
see
day.
Yeah, no, it is completely, especially for my own personal story. And I mean, I just look at the repeating themes. Mars direct now in the third house. The third house and the Gemini archetype are the same in terms of their functionality. This is expression and communication. And to have Mercury sitting in the 10th house with Venus over there, it plays a very important role in how these transits have actually brought to the surface something that is exposure, exposure in a very big way. And also the vulnerability that comes along with it, know?
Well, and I think that's beautiful too, because if we were to flip and look at it, first of all, your sun is on my Jupiter in the third house. And today we've got this Mercury lighting just both and all of that up in my communication zone. It's wildly expressive today.
And I would even go as far as to say that, this invitation from you that came to me, and saying, hey, let's hang out. Let's do this cool idea that you put across Jupiter. If I'm not mistaken, you said it was in your third house, Scorpio?
Yes.
Right. I mean, your whole entire structure of expression and how you've allowed yourself to transform loads of people's lives by just being able to share your ideas and other people's ideas at the same time. Particularly, I can see how that really plays out in a big way there, and I can see the synchronicity with the sun. Or was it your sun was on 2 degrees? My sun was on your Jupiter, or was the transiting sun?
Your sun is on.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's a good day. See, you're just we fell right in, right on time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you can see the tone of the Gemini feature. And I think that's what I want to kind of close off in terms of expressing here, is that this intercepted sign may show up very much within expression within my personal life, but really the qualities of the house and everything become illuminated when we have transits, and it reveals to us something more than just what would appear to be on the surface, and that kind of speaks volumes to what you opened up with today around the interceptions and your perspective and teaching.
Yeah. So the Sonia said, so she thinks then that interceptions may be like just soul evolution and unresolved patterns. Well,
yeah. And the other two charts that I have today, again, looking at it through the lens. So also being very mindful, Gemini material over here to be very diverse. And, from the perspective of what you shared there, yes, absolutely. My experience is that you become very aware of these more underlying core pieces of content within your life, that are pretty much unseen. And then when they do become emphasized and you're tapped in and tuned in, understanding your interceptions, you can really become aware of what exists in your psyche, what really wants to come through for you to witness, experience, and eventually feel in the body, and there's tremendous wisdom that comes along with that process.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Pretty awesome to kind of see it and get to explore it. So you've got another chart, huh?
Yep, that's right. Okay, so it's chart B. This is a really interesting experience. I've been working with this soul for just over a year, and consistently every meetings every single month, and it's been an interesting experience in terms of really unraveling what exists within this person's charts. And it was actually looking at this person's chart just a week ago when I noticed the interceptions playing out in a very profound way due to transits that have just been recently taking place, particularly Pluto and Saturn, and eventually Jupiter. It will land on that moon there. So in this person's case, they were actually born in Norway, so you can see that the houses look very different. And this is typically what you would experience with charts of people that are born closer to the North or South Pole, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep, the houses like looked all squished together. Exactly. Like, you have townhouses.
Yeah. One thing that just popped into my mind that I also was remembering from a conversation I was having the other day, and it really was something, and I'm curious to hear your thoughts on, was if you look at a chart, so like you take your charts and you see, wow, I've really got a large 7th house, and my first house is going to be equally as big. Imagine that, well, not imagine, we're going to, but it's just for the sake of imagination over here. We'll take Pluto. That's not Pluto, pardon me, Jupiter, right? So we know that Jupiter's been in Sagittarius last year, and then it moved into Capricorn, right? So this person's actually had Jupiter transit their first house for ages.
Ages, like forever.
Right?
Yeah.
And it's really interesting to me to observe from the perspective of charts are not that's not just random. It's like they're very, very specific in terms of time of birth and the karma associated with it. And I've observed in this person's life how the first house and 7th house, whenever we have a transit to these houses that are particularly large, we're going to have a tremendous amount of time spent in that field learning about what that's about.
Yeah.
And has that been your experience where you've observed, like in your own life, if you've got like bigger houses and you're like, oh my gosh, okay.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And with clients too. And it's interesting because I love a good analogy, right? And I'm like, okay, look, you've got your 10th house situation, and you're pretty much going to do relatively well in a short amount of time then, because I think you have the background knowledge to do that. Now, in your first house and your 7th house, you are starting at the ABCs. Like you do not speak the language yet. We're really going to have to get in here from the ground up, but that's okay, because I believe and I teach that the universe is kind, and that is why you're getting more time to learn that, So I tend to find that as well. But yeah, it is interesting too, though, because when we have these conversations, I'm like, we're in this for the long haul. We're going to have this conversation for a while, and it is okay. And the other thing I think about it, and I'll shut up with this, but it's like, in the learning of lessons, especially when these houses are big and there's so much that has to be learned, first, you're going to usually go in and go all the way and like run into the wall and really do it wrong. And then you kind of get halfway in, and then you see some things coming and you're like, wait, I know what's going on. I know what to do here. So you need the time to have that full experience.
Yeah. That's really beautiful. I loved how you described that whole entire experience, because it is true. I really like you're going to run into it. You're going to, like, am I getting this right? Nope. Okay. So here you see an intercepted sign with Cancer Capricorn. Cancer is intercepted in the 7th house, and the first house, again, ruled by Sagittarius, and Capricorn's in there, and then Aquarius rules the 2nd. So if we had to see, so we got Sagittarius ruling the first, Gemini ruling the 7th, right, over there. And then Leo rules the 8th, Aquarius rules the 2nd, as you can see the polarities like you shared earlier. And then there's good old Capricorn and Cancer archetypes hidden within that 12th house, or 7th house, 1st house axis. And then again, there you can see Taurus rules the 5th and Taurus rules the 4th. Scorpio rules the 10th. and the 11th house, right? So there's, again, that repeating theme of wherever you've got intercepted signs, there's going to be houses that are going to be intercepted as well. Okay. So look at these repeating themes. Mercury is assigned to the Gemini function, and Venus is associated with the 7th house. Look at that. South node in Libra. Okay. Mercury conjunct the South node in Libra there as well. So Mercury's at Scorpio, but it's right next to the South node ruler that's in Libra. Okay, so there's immediate kind of a repeating theme here. We know something along the lines of this person's very attuned to language, communication, and they're very attuned to meeting the needs of other people completely. But if you notice, Venus actually is in a new phase, like in EA. I don't want to get too into this because it's going to be probably too much confusing, but the relationship between Venus and Uranus here is a completely new phase. So like you said, I'm going to use that analogy going forward. I hope it's okay. Yeah. But this is a soul that's literally come in and said, I don't know how this new structural way of my needs and how to meet them and how they get expressed. I don't know how to do this, right? I'm in the ABCs of this process. So there's a conjunction there. And Venus is ruled by, or is ruling the South node. So we can see here that there's a strong connection between the South node in Libra, Mercury conjunction there, and then Venus ruling that as part of that process. Now, Mercury, from an EA perspective, is also the influencer for Virgo. Okay, so you can see here that there's more repeating themes, that Mercury influences, it deposits, right?
Yeah.
This Mercury, Venus, Pluto, Jupiter function. So there's a lot of material there, and so you can see that 7th house repeating theme dynamic, right? Again, Jupiter is in the 8th house. It's on the ascendant. It's in Virgo. It's ruled by Mercury, which is in Scorpio. Okay, Jupiter in the 8th house. So I hope I haven't gone too fast for people, but you can see the correlations between Jupiter, ruled by Mercury, Mercury, Scorpio, rising sign, 8th house, right?
Yeah.
And now, okay. Anything that you wanted to say or see? Just I can just talk, so I'm sorry for taking up time like that.
No, you're doing beautiful. I was actually just kind of thinking, though, in regards to the question we were talking about a little bit earlier about like who's kind of in charge, and looking at the themes of what's happening in this chart. One of the very first things I notice is that in terms of the relationships and how we're relationshiping and the expression of that relationship, the ruler is retrograde in Scorpio. So genuinely, what do you need and what do other people need? What's the intimacy of connection? And we're going to see maybe, I think, the struggle there. And I wonder too, just looking
100%.
at it quickly, if there isn't this theme of not only what do you need to express at that vulnerable level, but how to give.
Oh yeah.
Is the exact correct nature of giving.
Yeah, you're 100% spot on. And so if you look at the Capricorn, Mars is being ruled by Saturn here, which is in Aries. So there's another repeating theme. You've got Mars, first house, and then you've got Aries, first house, right? Aries is the same as Mars. So there's another repeating theme consistently. Saturn in Aries, Mars in the first house, and it's intercepted. Mars is in the house and it's also intercepted there. So there's this expression dynamic. You can see it, right?
Yeah.
And then, of course, the moon is also intercepted. So the Cancer archetype, which is associated with the moon and this Mars energy that's ruling that Saturn, they're all in the first house. And so here's the story, right, Gracie? You talked about this intimacy, being able to be with that vulnerability. This is somebody that grew up in a home where dad went out, did what he needed to do, but very determined, but was emotionally shut down, didn't feel like he could really express those parts of him. So he couldn't really express that in that vulnerability. And the mom, in the context of this case, also heavily burdened, moon in Capricorn, by the responsibility of the duties of the home, couldn't also express their needs. And so the relationship between the dad became something of struggle to really express in a very safe way for this person. And to the mom, what she did was, the person is a female, she then assumed the responsibility at a young age to just go and do this. And so now, if I take a look at the charts and we move over to B over here, notice how we've got Chiron and Aries on top of that Saturn. We've had this Mars retrograde moving across, of course. And then you've got this entire council of energy that's just moving through this thing here. It's pretty crazy. The North Node, of course, has been traversing that landscape for a long time. And when we were doing the work, the sun was actually on the Neptune, right? So the sun was on the natal Neptune, and Venus, of course, is now approaching the South Node. So what I wanted to share was that they came to realize that in their relationship to meeting other people's needs, they'd internalized this responsibility that they have to do this, and then neglected their own ability to meet their own needs in that space. And there was that vulnerability that you talked about that was kind of in caught up there. So they were literally just carrying everybody, taking care of everybody, being able to speak for them, nurture them in some space. And then they realized, you know what, I can't do this anymore. And that was actually because of the Jupiter transit and Saturn transit through the first house, that they become conscious of this very unconscious pattern in which they were the mother to all.
Right.
And then they forgot to mother themselves.
And it's nice though, because with the council there in Capricorn, if nothing else, I teach that Saturn and Capricorn do come to achieve. There is a purpose here. And more than anything, at that spiritual level, Saturn is not interested in temporary growth. So it typically tries to raise us spiritually. So I think spiritual maturity, and I think from those positions is when we do see the chart kind of light up and say, oh, I found this out. Here's what I need, or here's what I need to do. Here's how I will achieve. So it probably, and I hope in this person's life, it's getting to be received on both sides in a way that's like, whoa, that was crazy. Let's be better.
Yeah. Well, exactly. And there was definitely, throughout their entire year, consistently working on the chart, that the reason why I was like, oh, we have to use your chart for this presentation, because it was when the sun was on the Neptune at the time. Of course, Venus was within proximity of the South Node and also between that area there. So they had some new insights that came along when that conjunction took place. And so as the timing, and this is the beauty of what I would really say, it's, Intercepted is all about timing. So I would encourage you to go and look at events in your life that you would be able to remember that are correlating to your intercepted signs, and notice what changed for you, or what came up for you, or how you were able to be more conscious of things that may be just kind of there in the background, chilling out, hanging out, and so in this person's case, when this, the moon wasn't there, of course, but Pluto's at 22 degrees. They've already had an aspect to the natal moon, which Pluto conjunct the natal moon is a very intense experience.
Yeah.
Right.
You're gonna dig it out.
Yes, exactly. So this conjunction over here brought that insight. It brought the insight of how they've internalized through their childhood the responsibility of picking up and saying, okay, well, in order for me to survive, this was the message, right? In order for me to survive, I needed to take care of other people. And by taking other care of people, I realized that my whole entire sense of self, moon in the Capricorn in the first house intercepted, was rooted in this definition, and I didn't know this. So these transits actually created not only a fracturing of that, but also through Saturn's transit and Jupiter's transit through Capricorn, it brought the pressure to pay attention to these underlying things that would have never been actually noticed completely, Yeah. Really fascinating, really, really fascinating.
Yeah. Which is beautiful, because it is not the question of giving, but when and how to do it. Yay for them. I love that for them. My daughter is 17 and my other one is 13, and their generation has that phrase. And I think it's phenomenally useful. They'll say, oh, I love that for you. And I'm like, you hate it, but you really do think it's great because I like it. What a statement. I love that for you. It's a part of my daily life now.
Right. I can just imagine. Wow. Did you want to switch to going back to chat and talking there, or do you want to look at another chart? I'm pretty open to both, to be honest, just considering the time.
Yeah. If we have time, and I don't know if you have the willingness to kind of on the spot do it, but could we grab a chart from the chat?
Yeah, absolutely.
Going on? Okay,
Yeah.
let me go up here. I'll pull the birth date for you and you can pull it up on that side.
Okay.
Let's see, but this has been lovely. Like, I just think it's phenomenal conversation. It's amazing when we pick the topics. We don't actually know how it's going to go or where we're going to end up, but they have all just kind of been like, oh, this is the day for this chat.
Yeah. Yeah, it's you're right. 100%. I feel the vibe over there and you're completely tuned in. Love it, love it, love it so much.
Good. Okay, I'm putting in the chat to you the birthday and time, and then you can pull that and we'll take a look. And I think we'll just have time today, you guys, to do one chart, but more eat and greets to come. Okay, here you go. There you go. So this will be interesting to see because I asked people who knew for sure that they had interception so that we can, sort and sift through that. But also while we're getting that pulled up and ready, you guys, if you have other questions that you can think of that we can answer before we wrap up today, and we're almost at time, throw them in the chat and we will try to address those as we go along. And I am really interested to see now what's going to happen in my chart as the rest of these transits kind of blow around as we're wrapping up the year. I'm like, ooh, ladies, we're going to be busy. Seems to be the vibe.
All right. So it's okay. And getting it up on Solarfire.
Oh, yeah. That's always a good question, too. So you use Solarfire?
I mainly use Astrodine test or Astrodint. But when it comes to conversations like this, I'll use Solarfire. But yeah, I interchange between both of them, to be honest.
And is there like a reason, or is it just like what you do?
Well, I would for aesthetics looks, I like Solarfire because it has this kind of professional look to it, and there's different ways that you can do things, like looking at planetary nodes that I'm very interested in and stuff like that. But in terms of just letting a system just do all of the work for me, and I just got it in a database, I don't have to save and do all of that type of stuff with Solarfire. I use astro.com.
Okay.
All right.
Sorry, I realized I just messaged you too, and it's all in caps. I don't know why. I send messages all the time in caps. People probably feel like I yell a lot.
Okay. So just a quick question. On if I had to share the screen, the birth details will be there. Is that cool? Did they actually share it in the chat, or is it private to you?
Yeah, it was shared in the chat. So I think we are safe and good to go. And before we wrap up, I know we're just at time. If we have a little bit of time, can we go through very generally those intercepted sign pairings?
Sure, like as in Aries, Libra, and then Taurus, Scorpio. Okay, yeah, I'm up for it. I mean, I have loads of time, so if we feel that we go over, it's I don't feel, yeah. Okay. So I have the chart on the screen for us.
Okay.
And let's have a look. So it's from what I can see, it's an Aries, Libra energy in terms of the signs that are intercepted. So let's just go through our quick teaching process, right? The Pisces is ruling the 11th house. Taurus is ruling the 12th house cusp, indicated there. And so we have Virgo and Scorpio there. And so Libra, good old Libra, and Aries are intercepted. Hopefully that's not too like terrible artistic expression.
I was actually thinking the whole time, you're so good with your pen. Mine always looks just terrible. I'm like, ugh.
Okay. And then as always, the 8th house is influenced by the Cancer archetype. And so is the third here, the 2nd house Cancer, 3rd house Cancer, and there is the North Node intercepted into the houses itself. So my immediate observation here would look along the lines of, okay, so where's the weightedness? Where's the repeating theme? And we have Sun in the 1st. Okay, so it's going to kind of slow my very Gemini mind here so that I don't lose people, because it appears clear to me in my head, but not. Okay. the first thing where my attention and my intuition draws me to is look at the note, look at the sun sitting in the first house. Okay. Now, the fifth house is associated with the Leo archetype. Okay. From a Leo perspective, the sun is also the Leo archetype. So immediately that tells me something about this person's process in this lifetime is about really coming into understanding their self-expression. It's a Gemini rising. So immediately there's something around instinctually discovering your ability to speak up and say things and really be very curious and explore and have a voice, I would say. Here's the repeating theme. The Mars in the fifth house. First house is associated with Aries, Mars in the fifth house. So immediately this is very strong influence around expression. However, if I had to remove these things here, I'd say, okay, are these planets really deeply aspected? And yes, it is absolutely the case. Look, Saturn in Libra, right bang in the middle of it, is squaring the nodes here. So you have your nodal axis in signs, in houses that are covered by that, the Cancer archetype. So it's squished in there. And then you have the planet that is actually squaring the nodes in aspect to it as well, in the house that is, or the sign that is intercepted. So there's a lot here. And I would say that this has a lot to do with authority, right? So with this just kind of intuitively running on the edge over here, it seems that there's a lot of your childhood, and especially around being seen from the father or from the parents, that is unresolved, around being able to really internalize your self-worth and to recognize the importance of how you do need a lot of like self-validation, but you're learning about self-validation and you may have not gotten that from your parents. And so that's led to this kind of flip-flopping between really feeling abandoned by this unconscious pattern of the parents. I hope this is not too exposing, by the way. I'm sorry if it's the case. It's just how I see. I'm sorry if it is. But there's that Saturn archetype in this chart is very predominant. Okay. And it speaks a lot to feeling included with people and feeling not included. So the not included part is the Libra constellation. It's either I'm in or I'm out. Am I socially accepted or not? So with Saturn here, there's a flip-flopping between really trying to integrate yourself within the context of people who feel and get you and are able to actually, resonate with you. This would be the Aries in the 11th house here. The 11th house is friends and associations and groups. And then if you want to go one step lower than that, or beneath that, it is how you actually express, how you actualize, how you say, hey, everybody, here I am. This is me. And this is what I have to say. So my sense here is that this Libra quality within Pluto and Saturn and Mars indicates timing around resolving the underlying dynamics as to why you didn't get a lot of recognition or appreciation growing up, and how self-expression and self-creative purpose feels very delayed with that Saturn. So that would be first, I would say, that would come up for you. And obviously this is a really big time considering that Venus has been moving through Libra. So you must have had some experiences recently with Venus on your Saturn and on your Mars, and of course, eventually going over to your Pluto around this, right? This is, again, I mean, we can't even make this stuff up, right? The chart we choose out of all of the possibilities of people that could have their chart had a conversation and be broadcast, we have a chart where Venus is on the Saturn between the Pluto in an intercepted sign, and we're talking about this person like they're getting seen.
Yeah. Well, and I was also thinking as we look at it, this idea for this person of allowing themselves to have pleasure, maybe challenged or delayed here, and in a very material way, like, no, I shouldn't buy this. I need to pay this bill, even if all of the bills are paid. Right? This idea of I can't spend that on me is something I would think could be a part of the story here. And so far she's like, oh my God, this is really accurate. So I think.
Well, like, if I loved what you shared there, because while I shared what I shared, what this person really needed to hear was the recognition that they could be who they are. and feel okay with that, and allow themselves to give the things that they felt they were never seen for and recognized as a child. And that is probably one of the most profound things that this person can hear. And hey, obviously it would happen while this aspect is taking place through their fifth house. And yeah, that's, I really, 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 from the bottom of my heart, think that this is something that was important for the soul to hear, because it reinforces to them, it affirms to them that A, there's nothing wrong, you know, with their experience, and B, that it is okay for me to take up space and allow myself to be fun and exciting and playful and cheerful. You know, that's the intention with the Aries ruled by Libra here. You want to be very independent and break free from the patterns of dependency of other people's need to recognize you. You do it yourself now, and like do it in a very bold way, even though that scares
house
you.
Is not like quiet. Aries, especially once it's activated, is not like quiet. So you're gonna have to go for it and say the weird thing, be the weird thing, be the different, and it is lovely.
Yes, that's right, exactly.
Yay, this was beautiful, and she's definitely resonating with that down there. So before we wrap up, let's, if we can, and you're into it, let's take a look at these sign pairings and just give kind of a general idea. Now, this is going to be a very general idea of what it means when you have the different pairs kind of intercepted, but it'll maybe give you something to think about as you go forward and examine your charts.
Sure. Well, I actually have a chart that's got Aries on the ascendant, and we could go through it that way. Otherwise, maybe this is just, I could share that. Okay. So let's see where I have placed it.
Yay. It's so nice. So when we do pull them and we do them kind of on the spot, and people are like, yeah. And it's the testament that you just can't make this stuff up. Like we've got a goal, we've got a mission. Here it is.
One thing I wanted to share that's kind of outside I've got this now. So let me just share it over there. Yes, there we go. Is you're talking about on the spot. I remember I think it was December 2015. Yes, 2015. I did a Chiron like webinar presentation, right? And one of the things was I said I would look at your chart for 5-10 minutes on the webinar presentation, just to kind of give you an overall of what it looks like. I didn't realize that almost 40 people will sign up over both days. Like there's tons of people. And I found myself doing an hour and a half to 2 hours worth of on the spot readings of that. And it was from that moment onwards that I was like, I can trust my intuition.
Right. Right. Yeah. There is nothing like being thrown in the pool to see if you can swim. Right. Absolutely nothing. That's brilliant.
It was probably one of the coolest and scariest moments ever.
I love it. Okay, so let's just start at Aries and we'll work our way around through these 6 pairings.
Okay, well, would you like to go first and kind of share some of your thoughts on it in the pairings?
Yeah, sure. So typically in my experience, when I see that, and you guys, just to be clear, in case you're new and you're like, what are we looking at? These are not intercepted, but we just pulled it up so you can kind of keep an idea of the pairings as we go along. But remember, you would see them in an intercepted way. They would be in the middle, okay? So typically when I see the Aries Libra interception, much like we just saw here, it is this dynamic of the me and the we that is trying to express itself, but usually is kind of stuck in between the 2 signs. And so it comes out as this kind of garbled expression of either side of that, especially depending on which one is a little bit more stimulated. So learning, maybe not to express Libra like a Virgo or like a Scorpio, like it's got to be this in the middle expression that is wholly Libra. And Libra tends to be in a lot of different capacities. It is the energy of relation, right? That's the evolutionary goal of Libra, is I can only go so far on my own. But savviness is something that I see here as well. I've seen plenty of clients who have that interception and they're better at business than they ever knew. You know? They're a lot more savvy. And then that Aries on the other side gets activated and it's like, you're right. So it's kind of that in the background. I didn't know, I forgot, I didn't understand. And then that me and that we axis gets pretty activated.
Yeah, that's absolutely. I would absolutely agree that there's this dynamic between finding the balance between integration and then time for self. Integration, time for self, right? Well, what I've noticed with the axis of the Scorpio Taurus dynamic, firstly, you seem to be learning about what I possess and then how I hold on to that, and then how that becomes a way of sharing with other people. So like in this conversation today, or, how we've collaborated, very Scorpio-esque energy, we've taken two resources and we've collaborated, we've put things together. So what I've noticed with the Intercepted of Taurus Scorpio is one side of your self is going to be very Venusian, very Taurus orientated. Where are my resources? How can I hold on to them? And then Scorpio comes along on the other side, and it almost feels like the rug gets pulled under your feet. That's what I've noticed. And it creates this kind of shock where you may have been holding on to things or a perspective, or, being very, like Jeffrey talks about the frog in the well, where we're seeing one point, and then Scorpio says, hey, there's actually another point over here, and we move, and we kind of get shaken into experiencing, exposing ourselves to new things. But in that sense, we can also become very attached, Scorpio, to this constant process of letting go and saying, I don't want to get attached to anything, right? Because I don't want to lose.
Mm-hmm.
I don't like loss. So I'm not going to get into that relationship, even though it brings me a tremendous amount of XYZ.
Absolutely right. Like, yeah, I'm going to avoid this loss at all costs.
Right,
I'm
exactly.
good to go. Thank you very much. Yeah. Okay. Gemini Sag, which we both have, which I think is just a hoot in general. Now, Sag is this energy that I love because, Gemini wants all the details. It's like, nope, what are the details? I need all of the details. And sometimes it's like useless information where you're like, why do you need that? Right. But Sag is quite the opposite. It's general. And my example I always use is that Sag is like, I just want world peace. That's huge. And Gemini's like, how are we going to get there? Right? Like, it's great to want it, but how are we going to get there? So you have this mix between very general, sometimes maybe even vague ideas, beliefs, things like that, versus the details. So what I tend to find in mine and with other people is it's hard to bridge that gap with these two. Like, what do I do with all of this information? Or what do I do with these beliefs? Or depending on what the activation is, how do I surrender a belief that I have here, or an idea, or this generality? But generally, what and how you handle information becomes a little bit of a trick here, I think. And Scorpio on the one side, if that's who your interception is dancing with, is like all deep and emotional about it. And then you've got Capricorn, who's like, it's not a big deal. It's not helping us achieve anything. But Sag is like, hold on, I think this is maybe a big scale, important situation, right? And then on the other side, Taurus is like, it's fine. And Cancer's like, that doesn't feel very good. And Gemini's like, I just need the details. I just need the information.
Right? That was such a brilliant way of describing that. I love how you integrated the other signs and how they actually communicate with each other. I love the way that signs do actually talk to each other like that. They do actually have those conversations with each other, even if we anthropomorphize them through our own human experience, they do tend to have that.
It's a real riot when you think about them, and you do put them in the conversational context. To me, it makes it make a lot more sense as to how did we get stuck here, right? Especially with an interception. Okay,
that's right. So going on with how you've actually kind of led that over there, Capricorn is, as you talked about, this is very much about what we're going to build, what we're going to structure. How are we going to formulate a goal that seems to be in alignment with something that's meaningful for us. So what I've noticed with Capricorn, Cancer interceptions, and particularly with the other charts that I had, the other chart also had an intercepted Cancer Capricorn, was how do I integrate my sense of self? This is the Cancer part into this definition. And generally what happens, what I've seen is a struggle between actually knowing what that definition is, or being influenced by a conditioning field or a life where you don't see beyond that conditioning. You don't see yourself actually existing outside of that conditioning, that there's more to that circumference of structure that exists. You don't see beyond that, right? So there's thinking about this Aquarius, Sagittarius, very air, fire energy that wants to expand and go out and detach. Capricorn's very much stuck in there and saying, nope, this is how it is. This is my job. This is how I've got to do this. And this is my responsibility. And I'm going to take care of everything. And Cancer's like, could we at least just for one moment allow ourselves to relax, to just
right?
not.
Capricorn's like, what does that achieve?
Exactly.
Tell me what it achieves and I'll consider it, right?
Exactly. And, that's that Cancer part, right? There's a part of you that wants to also begin to nurture that inner world and really connect with that inner space and say, who am I? What do I align with? What are my values? How this whole sense of home and my inner world also seems to be something a little bit murky within the context of this energy here. So it's very much like you talked about with the Gemini, Leo on the other side, Leo, Gemini, details with Gemini, communicating, expression with Leo. But inside of it was, what do you communicate? How do you express? Where is your identity that allows that expression to actually take shape? So we can express and we can communicate, but is it really you? So it's learning how to define yourself, and you're going through that process of definition and self-definition.
What a riot, huh? We're so busy. We have a busy lifetime. Okay, so Leo, Aquarius, right? This is more, I feel like I'm getting all the me versus we ones today, right? So my me and my expression and my special sauce and what makes me unique and how I get to be bold and joyful and bright and seen, right? Versus where am I, but I fit into the collective, right? I add to the whole here. So as these are intercepted, this can be optimistic challenge, right? Like, I'm totally pumped to express something, but I'm not sure what's mine and what's ours. And I think sometimes too, in a collective way, the difference between my dreams for my future and what everybody else thinks it should look like. Now, I know too that even when I look at nodal work around Leo and Aquarian energy, this waiting for some kind of approval is huge. So at this evolutionary level, depending on which side is getting a little help, there could be this, you're trying to integrate your own special sauce out there in the world, and to say it and to do it and to love and to be joyful in public and to take these risks. Right. And on the other side, it is as much, I think, of a risk to be friendly and to be all inclusive and to come out and to be a part of the public and the socials and create a future somewhere in there that is just yours, but adds to the whole as well. So that me, we, I think, shows up there as well. What about you? Do you have a different interpretation there?
No, I pretty much agree with you on everything that you said. And to add to that, or to highlight that point around how that axis is waiting for validation to actually say, I can do this, is it's really, really strong there. So if you've got that placement and that there, and you're hearing this, that you might not have always considered, that just being able to express and follow something that's important to you is part of your validation of yourself. And then what will happen is, as you do that, you'll align with people that say, hey, this is pretty cool, I dig what you're doing. And you get that feedback from that Aquarius place that gives you more sense of that self-actualization that's igniting in you, So it is a journey to really come into that relationship between who am I and how do I fit in, and it starts with self-validation, really, but that may not actually be something that you would have thought about consistently, but felt that you really wanted it.
Yeah. All right, Virgo Pisces, our last pairing. And I love these two. Just in general. Yes. I just love their axis in general. I'm trying to create the world, but also like be a part of the world materially, but also fit into the universal scheme. What a situation.
Yes, absolutely. It's so true. And one of the ways that I like to really capture and grasp the experience of the Virgo Pisces axis is if you could, you stood outside and you looked at the cosmos. As you look at the cosmos and you feel the enormity of the Pisces energy, you're really small in comparison to this incredibly vast, expansive space. And then you just take your head and you look down and you see a small ant or some bug that's moving across, and you really see your enormity in relationship to them. And it's this microcosm, macrocosm relation. And in that moment, you can feel the axis between this relationship to the unknown and your inability to control it, and then your power, right? Your ability to influence something in that Virgo state, really coming into your earth. And there's another thing that I also notice with this position with these two axes is that, generally speaking, Virgo likes to organize stuff, right? There's a lot of understanding around that. But what I sense is that the Virgo energy is actually seeking to create coherence out of the boundarylessness of the Virgo, of the Pisces energy. And the Pisces is saying to Virgo, let's kind of just relax a little bit while we're stuck in this mode of looking at all the details in a very mercurial type of way. And so what I've observed, and I haven't seen many Virgo Pisces intercepted signs in terms of the signs, in my case being the houses, is that there can be an experience of just being in these two extremes, where on one side you're very relaxed and very Neptunian by nature, and you've got no boundaries in this process, and then all of a sudden, out of the blue, you experience crisis, and you're thrown into that Virgo part of, okay, there's no coherence here, and we need to get things organized, and maybe today or the next day we could start putting in some goals in place that could achieve some of your dreams, because sometimes wishful thinking doesn't work.
Right, absolutely. And it's funny that you're talking about how you can at the same time exist in the two extremes of this one. And it's so funny. I think about that place where you're driving and you're on the road and you're like, we're all a part of the circle of life, and somebody cuts you off and you're like, right? That is that. But then the evolved level of that is like, even after actualization, you still have to do the laundry.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
They got to be together.
Exactly. It's true in every sense of the word, and to add to that as well, that the Virgo Pisces axis, from the perspective of the human psychology, is they're interchanging signs. So Aries to Leo is the subjective self, and then from Libra all the way to Aquarius is how we then begin to develop ourselves in relation to other, and society. And so Virgo and Pisces create an interchanging dynamic. So I would even go as far as to say that what is interchanging in your life, what is in a mutable state within your life, and how are you becoming aware of how this Virgo Pisces axis is revealing to you that how you unlock certain challenges in your life are linked with this mutability energy of, do I kind of surrender to this moment right now and just kind of recognize it as divine timing, or is this a moment where I've got to realize that, okay, I've lost my keys 3 times in a row. I've really got to make a considered effort to put something on the wall that when I come in, I put it there and it's sorted.
Yeah, absolutely. Because I think the challenge that you can find in this, amongst many interceptions, but this one specifically, is like, you can yell at a flower all you want. It doesn't make it grow faster. Like, it's just not going to happen. But there is this place of, I'm not in control, but I also do the footwork.
Sure. Exactly. Yeah. Exactly.
Wow. That's it. Those are the 6 pairings, you guys. So hopefully it gives you a little general idea. And if this is brand new information to you today and you're like, zoop, that's okay. Leave it. If it's not time for that, take it. If you're ready for that, whichever, will have the video up for just ever, forever, as long as it can be up there. So Simon, thank you so much for coming over. This has been just fabulous. I've just enjoyed you.
Yeah, it was boatloads of fun. So much. And really, really grateful to have the collaboration and to share astrology, and for everybody else to be participating with us. Loads of fun. Thank you. I appreciate it. Yeah.
Everybody go over, check out Simon's channel, go to his website, bring all your interceptions to his front door. And you can talk about them. And I'll make sure that all of Simon's connection links to his YouTube, his website, all that good stuff are in the description box down below. All right. Well, we're going to get out of here and get on with the rest of the day, but the eat and greets are not over. This week, we will have another one on Friday at 5 p.m. Mountain Standard Time. And it will be Matthew We Met. We're going to explore perfections a little bit more. Chris Brennan brought them to us, and now we're going to see what you do when you go just beyond knowing what they are. So I look forward to seeing everybody there. All right, you guys, have a great day.